been a busy
She'll be a junior.
down in person, and being in person takes
It will pop,
energy
yeah.
out. Yes, it does.
Who has the controls?
Oh, he is. Oh, yeah. Yep, he's going. Not as a. They don't need him as a delegate. At one point, that was kind of
Oh, maybe that's what I
in
was.
the air. But he's going. On your own?
Check in.
All right. Good. Woo. Good afternoon, evening. Welcome to the Board of Directors meeting for MSAD number 51, our kickoff to the 2024-25 school board. I'm really excited to have some new school board members with us today for their first meeting. And I was saying it's to test out your mic. We're going to take just a moment for everyone to introduce yourselves as the new members of the board and to the public. And we're just really excited to be able to have had our onboarding session a few weeks ago with both the members here today and also our new student member, Katie Wallace, who wasn't able to join us. But I will look to my left first and ask Sean to introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Sean Thurston. I live in Cumberland, and I'm really excited to be here. Something I really look forward to, so glad it's finally here.
Great. Thanks, Sean. And then we'll go to Jesse.
Hey, Jesse Lamar Vincent, also from Cumberland. I've got a rising third grader and a soon-to-be kindergartner in the school district, so I'm so excited to be part of the school board and, yeah, help out any way I can.
Great. Thanks, Jesse. And Sarah.
I'm Sarah Rose, and I live in North Yarmouth, and I have 3 graduates and 1 rising senior, and several hundred children that I've cared for over the years, so I'm heavily invested in the schools.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. And the mic check worked, so we're good. So we're going to move to approval of the meeting minutes. I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the minutes of the June 17th, 2024 meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Annika. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Tim. Any questions? All right, hearing none, and I know a few of you weren't board members at the time, so no need to vote on this one, but all in favor? Great. It's unanimous.
Leanne, I have to abstain because I wasn't here.
You weren't there, Megan. Thanks, Megan. Wonderful. So now I'm going to move to the public comment section. I would like to welcome and recognize the value of public comment, and to ensure public comment is fair and orderly, we follow procedures outlined in our board policy, BEDH, and we ask that all members of the public do so as well. We follow this policy to help keep the meeting civil, respectful, and productive. We also hope that this allows for all community members who would like to speak to be heard. We ask that speakers use the designated podium when making their comments and speak into the microphone. If you are interested in speaking, please wait until you're recognized by myself, the chair. Comments by individuals are limited to a maximum of 3 minutes at a meeting. A clock will be visible on the screen to help keep track of time. After 3 minutes, the timer will go off and your comments should be wrapped up. Please state your name and town of residence before beginning your remarks. Residents and staff members will be given priority over non-residents, and our policy allows for 30 total minutes. As a reminder, public comment is not a time for discussion, Q&A, or debate between the board and speakers. Rather, it is a chance for members of the public to express their opinions on school and educational matters. The board will not comment on remarks made by speakers during the public comment period. Please know that this does not mean that we are not listening and does not express any agreement or disagreement with your statement. Lastly, please keep comments respectful and civil. We are neighbors here, be kind. That includes member of the audience. Please do not interrupt or respond to the speaker's comments. We also ask that comments are addressed to myself, the chair. Please do not direct comments at or about individuals in our schools or community. And I will want to note, I will stop any comment that is contrary to these rules. And you may be asked to leave if you disrupt the meeting. So I would like to welcome anyone who's here for public comment. You're closest.
It's on the chair there, Bruce.
Bruce Sherwin, Cumberland. I'm much more regular at the town council, so I didn't know to look in the chair for that agenda. I'm here to talk tonight about the referendum vote, which is, I know history, but we need to learn from history, and I think we need to learn some things from the way it was handled. The referendum vote included a new school and artificial turf. Two things that are really not related to each other. The artificial turf took a back seat, or really had no seat, in the advertising and notices that went out in this way. Full-page ad in the Falmouth Forecaster, no mention of the turf. Weekly MSAD newsletter, something similar to the Forecaster ad, no mention of the turf. The Cumberland Crier Weekly, another weekly newsletter with the similar thing to the ad, no mention of the turf. I think that a lot of people voted in this vote, this referendum, without knowing they were voting for turf, even though it was publicized some. But people don't pay attention. Just look at the national stuff. People don't pay attention. You got to help them. That turf should have been brought up repeatedly, like the school was, as to what people are voting for. And they voted, the turf also is a known global warming contributor. Sort of anti to the way Cumberland operates, in my opinion. I think Cumberland residents, taxpayers would not be in favor of global warming, typically. I know I'm not, although I was in favor of the school. The vote turned out to be by 49 votes. You know how close it is? That's about 0.5% of the votes. 25 would have turned the vote opposite of how it came out. I think there's way more than 25 voters that voted for the school that did not know they were voting for turf. Can't prove it, but I believe it, the way people don't pay attention. And one of the biggest things that upsets me about this is our town government needs to be trusted, and the handling of the turf, not putting it into notices, important notices that are seen by a lot of people, made it sort of deceptive. I would call it in the neighborhood of being deceptive to vote only for the school. And also, we didn't make enough of an issue about the global warming aspects of artificial turf that I think, this is harsh, I think the school board and the administration set a very poor example for our students. Very poor. You flunked.
Thank you, Bruce.
Good evening. My name is Joel Richard. I'm a resident of Cumberland and the dad of a rising fifth grader. I came tonight just to, I'm sort of going through the materials, not terribly successfully at first, trying to find the policy on cell phones in school. I'm very much an advocate for not having cell phones in school, if at all possible. I know that the superintendent has a new policy coming forward for the high school, I believe, in the fall. I did get some responses back from a couple of board members. Thank you so much from the email that I sent out. I sent around an article, you probably all saw, it was the Maine Parents Ramp Up Fight to Get Cell Phones Out of Schools. I guess just as a resident and a dad of a rising fifth grader, I am very much in favor of getting cell phones out of schools. They're a huge distraction. They're unnecessary. Yeah, just with the amount of research that's come out about the mental health crisis in kids that's come about since the advent of smartphones and social media and things like that, I think it's an unnecessary distraction in school, and I'm very happy to hear that things are being moved forward to at least limit their use, and I'd very much advocate for them to be just like put someplace at the beginning of the day and not accessed until the very end of the day. Nothing in the halls, and I'm very much looking forward to find out what the bags are all about. For I got something from one of the emails replies about cell phones going into bags in the high school, like during each of the classes. But anyway, since there's no question, no question answer session, I'll just leave it there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joel.
Thank you all for allowing me to make some brief comments. My name is Carrie Cook. My family and I live in North Yarmouth. I have 2 sons who are going to kindergarten and 4th grade, and I'm a family physician. As a family physician, I listen closely to the work of the U.S. Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy. For many years, he has studied and written about the epidemic of loneliness and isolation we are currently facing in the United States. This epidemic, in his and my view, is inextricably influenced by the rise of social media. While there is ongoing research and certainly nuance about who may benefit from or be harmed by social media, I strongly believe that the evidence is sufficient to follow the Surgeon General's guidelines. At a national level, these include age-gating access to social media and developing age-appropriate health and safety standards for technology platforms. Unfortunately, there has been a dearth of action at the national level, so we must focus on what we can do at a local and family level. These actions, according to the Surgeon General, include creating tech-free zones, the encouragement of children to foster in-person relationships, and working with other parents to establish shared norms and practices around healthy social media use. In line with those actions, my family has signed the Wait Until 8th Pledge, which is a national grassroots-driven effort to come together and defer smartphone use for our kids until at least 8th grade. I asked the school board and school system to consider endorsing this program or a similar idea, because I think in community support and co-parental involvement is where we're going to get the most support to help encourage that for our kids. I also ask that the schools seriously undertake the consideration to make MSAD 51 schools smartphone free. I'm very happy to support these efforts in whatever way that is needed, and happy to be a part of any kind of brainstorming and discussions going forward. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Katie. All right. So looking around, I think that's it. Thanks everyone for coming out for public comment. So we're going to move. We don't have a presentation item tonight, but we do have some items for action. It is a set of items related to some new hirings, and the first, I will ask for a motion for the approval of the professional position of Pathways Coordinator.
So moved.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Christina. So Jeff will walk us through this position.
Yes, this position is a result of a vacancy from a resignation. We had 18 applicants. 5 applicants were interviewed, and this is a high school position for Pathways Coordinator. And we have the applicant in front of you at this time for approval.
Any questions? All in favor? Great. Unanimous, thank you. Can I have a motion to approve the appointment of the professional position for the GHS Special Education Resource Room?
So moved.
Thank you, Kim. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Annika. Can you talk us through this one?
Yep, and this is a position for high school resource room and special ed case manager. We had 4 applicants and 2 were interviewed. This was a late resignation for special education teachers. Many people have found positions by the middle of June, but we were very fortunate to be able to find someone with a really, not only a good background in special education, but also has done many other things, including has been a TV meteorologist, but has been an educator since the beginning, so in and out of education and other fields. So very happy to be able to secure this applicant in front of you.
And is this a very specialized position? Is that why we only have 4 applicants?
No, this is a resource room, so this is a standard special education position. This person helps with academic support for students at the high school level.
Okay.
But special education teachers in general, we don't tend to have a lot of applicants, but part of it was timing as well.
Any other questions? All in favor? Great, unanimous. Can I have a motion to approve the appointment for the GMS 6-8 grade 6 social studies and science position?
So moved.
Thank you, Tim. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sarah.
This position had 22 applicants. This is for 6th grade science and social studies combination. Most of our teachers at the middle level teach one content area. We do have this particular position straddles 2 different content areas, and it is not as attractive as other positions because there's 2 content areas. However, we had a lot of interest in the position, and 4 people were interviewed, and the person that you're considering tonight has been a teacher for several years in another school system. So very happy to be able to put this name forward. And I will say that you'll see that the vacancy is replacing a particular teacher at the middle school. That person has not left the middle school. What it was a domino effect of a resignation, and then people kept moving around positions. So
Okay,
if
thank you.
anybody saw his name and said, wait, he's leaving, no, he didn't. He did not leave.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Great. All in favor? Great. It's unanimous. Okay. So now we're going to move to approval of. Okay. Sorry. Let me start over. So this is an approval of a resolution to authorize lease purchase of technology equipment. We'll read the motion and then we'll have a little more explanation behind what this resolution is. So could I have a motion to move that the resolution entitled Resolution to Authorize Lease Purchase of Technology Equipment in the principal amount of $772,441 be adopted in form presented to this meeting?
So moved.
Thank you. Jesse, can I have a second?
Second.
I'll get that one to Megan. Okay. Can you walk us through this, Jeff?
Yes, and I want to note in the memo that I sent out on July 15th, that number said 722. It should have been 772 in the memo. So what you have in the motion here is correct, 772,000. And during the budget process, for those who were on the board at the time that we went through the budget process, we had an item that was 285,000. That was for lease purchasing technology. That was the placeholder. But that amount actually materializes 772,441 in technology equipment. We have grade 2 devices that are being replaced. We have all of our teacher, specialists, and administrator devices, which we only replace every 4 to 5 years. And so this year it was all up at once. We knew we had kind of deferred that from last year, knowing that we couldn't go another year by doing that. We're not replacing our ed tech machines this year. We've been doing that in other ways over the years. So some of their machines are newer. And then some of this technology equipment also includes bus cameras. We've purchased the bus cameras. They did not come in, they were not actually delivered on site until later in the school year, and now we are putting that into this lease purchase, so I also wanted to include that, which I did not include in the memo, but wanted to make sure that you knew that. So we will have cameras on all of our buses as well, which is something we've talked about for some time now, and the order took forever to get the order in. They have started replacing them, so we'll have interior and exterior cameras in all of our buses. So that 772 includes that as well.
Thank you. Questions?
Did we end up getting cameras for the vans too?
I don't believe that was part of it, but I can check on that.
I remember we talked about whether.
We did talk about it. I don't think that was part of the initial order. But I actually will check on that and get back to the board on that.
Do the cameras have sound? Do they pick up recordings?
Yes, they do. Yeah, they're audio and visual cameras.
And how will that be reviewed? Like, what
That's
will
reviewed-
that process be?
Yeah, it's reviewed in alignment with our policy. Basically, if there's a complaint that's made, the administration will look into it with the director of transportation or the assistant director of transportation.
So that would be like a parent would call in, or a bus driver would have a concern.
Right.
Bring it to,
And then it would be reviewed at that point. But it's not, we don't ongoing review these things, and they are deleted after a period of time. So it also works on the other side. If someone goes by a bus, we have a lot of those every year.
Yeah.
And a lot of times the drivers don't have an opportunity to get a license plate. So we report it to the police, and the police are not able to do anything. So this will now give us the information
Excellent.
to be able to follow up on those, which is good.
Jeff, how many of these 3-year cycle leases, which is really common,
Yep.
obviously, but like how many of these do we have? Like,
Annually.
yeah.
So basically, we're placeholding every year.
Or like next year, like you said, it's like grade 2, right?
Yep.
So like from my experience, when I did something like this, I'd be like, okay, all the student computers are in the 3-year lease, and the next year we had like the staff computers were on 3-year leases too.
Yep.
So how do we have a schedule of
do.
like how many of these are we talking about?
We replace
keep track.
second grade every year because those are the students that get the laptops.
Okay,
And
yeah,
then
that makes
so
sense.
they take them all the way, second, third, fourth. And when they get to fifth, we now have them on the MLTI schedule.
Okay,
That's basically,
okay.
so if, when you hear me say second grade every year,
Okay.
we're starting with that group. They keep their
It's summer
devices.
vacation. See, I gotta catch up a little bit.
You probably remember.
MLTI.
It's a Main Learning Technology Initiative. The state still kicks in, not as much as they used to, but they still kick in money for the middle grades.
What about iPads? Are they?
Kindergarten and first grade.
Yeah, but are they, so they're on the next year's lease that we have, like another
That
cycle?
one, yeah, that one is not up. I can't remember where we're at in the cycle with that one, but they are on a cycle.
And then the copiers were last year, right? We had
Right.
new copiers, and they're on another lease probably.
Yes.
That's similar to
If
it?
you want a whole list of leases,
I'm
we
just
try
trying
to do
keep
that,
track of
but
the cycle of how it goes.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
it is confusing, and we have tech leases for everything. We also, if you recall, we have sometimes paid off leases early, so we'll
Yep.
pay off a tech lease. That means that it creates a hole for us in the next year, so then we have to, because we're always having technology and we're always putting them on lease purchases.
Yeah.
So when we pay one off in the end of a fiscal year, we end up with a hole in the next fiscal year that we have to fill, because we still have to pay that lease every year.
Yeah.
But we try to do it, like if you have it in your home, this is the way we try to do it as much as possible. You have a car, you get that car payment paid, then you bring on a new car before you, so you always have one going. And that's what we try to do with technology. I can't say it works all the time. We have tried, when we have money at the end of the year. As you know, we've made those transfers, we've paid those leases off, and then we'll take on another, we'll have to take that lease on a year from now. But we try to keep it on we're always paying a technology lease, multiple leases at once. We're trying not to exceed the amount that we've got budgeted from year to year.
Okay.
I will say that since the pandemic, we've been off a little bit on that. But I'm happy to get a complete list if the board would like it. Probably be good to have.
I'm the only one that probably is. Yeah, I love seeing that stuff.
We
so
go
I
through
would love
Bank
to
of
see it.
America a lot
Yeah.
on these leases, and they give us a good rate, so.
And last question. You mentioned the deferment that we did last year. If I remember, it was because we were spending so much on the portables or?
We did, yep. That was another
Waiting.
piece, is that we had the new portable unit that went in. We had 12 rooms. We had to outfit all those 12 rooms with new technology.
Okay.
So that was another part of it.
Can I ask a quick question about the cameras? How do we communicate to parents and caregivers that there are cameras? Because that's new this year.
Yep, I think that's something that I probably would put in a newsletter at the beginning of the year. Really, they didn't start installing them until May, and there were only a couple that they were able to get to. The rest of them came on later after that.
Okay.
So I will make a note to make sure we communicate that. And I think it's, it's good, again, we won't be using those cameras unless an issue arises. And it is FERPA protected, so it's not like a parent can come in and start looking at every kid, what they're doing on the bus.
Right.
It's isolated for their kid. If we can't isolate it, then we don't show the video. It's really more for administrators' use.
Got it.
Do you know how the bus drivers feel about it? I mean, I've heard from a bus driver that they felt like it was a protective thing, right? Like
Yep.
they appreciated like another eye on it. But I've also heard from another perspective that it's similar to like teachers not wanting cameras in their room because there's like an invasion of, someone's eyes are always on them.
Right.
So just from have we gotten a sense of like how they're feeling about it and how we'll be using it and building trust from that sense?
Well, I can only speak anecdotally. I've talked to several drivers individually myself, and they have all said that they are very much in favor of it.
Okay.
They really appreciate us doing this and think we should have done it a long time ago.
Yeah, and I like the idea of the exterior ones, especially because, yes, if there is an incident, then they don't need to worry about trying to capture a license plate.
There's several of those a year. It's surprising how many we have.
Yeah, that's really scary. Any other questions? All in favor? Great, unanimous. Thank you.
Before we move on to the next one, I've noticed that none of our 3 new school board members are in on the Blue Notes agenda, and I don't think we covered that in onboarding.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I just want to make sure
cover it
that
now.
the 3 of you know about that, because when we're reading,
Yes, I'm reading something that.
yeah. So if you go in the folder and click on the agenda, the Blue Notes one,
Thank you, Kim.
that is like, it spells it out more, like how the motion should be worded, things like that. So, yeah, I just noticed nobody.
And I haven't asked anyone else to read any of the recommended votes yet. So since you're in it, do you want to do the next one? Do you want to do okay.
I move that the resolution entitled Resolution Regarding Declaration of Official Intent to Reimburse General Fund Expenditures for Elementary School Project Expenditures be adopted in form presented to this meeting, and that an attested copy of said resolution be included with the minutes of this meeting.
Thank you, Kim, for the motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Megan.
Okay, so this resolution would authorize the district to be able to float cash until we are able to get the bond anticipation note in place as was approved by voters in order to get the financing plan. So we don't have the financing plan. We will not have that financing plan in place until February. And the first thing that first step as part of the financing plan is a bond anticipation note where we can pay for the work of the school project as it's ongoing. Between now and February, we have a lot of expenses, including architectural expenses that we have to continue paying. We'll have permit fees. We have subcontractors, traffic studies, et cetera. All those things have to be paid for. They can't wait till February. So this resolution just authorizes the board to move ahead with floating cash from fund balance, and then in February we'll use the bond anticipation note, reimburse fund balance back in February once we receive the financing from the band. So it just gives us that opportunity to be flexible during the next 6-7 months.
Thank you for that explanation. Do people have questions? Okay, all in favor? Great, unanimous, thank you. Okay, so now we're actually going to move into, I would call it the meat of the agenda, which is the superintendent's report, which will include an update on the summer facility projects and the much anticipated update on school project next steps, which really kicks off sort of the planning stages. And just so everyone is aware, this is really the first time the board itself is seeing some of these proposed next steps as well. So I really,
That was me.
I really anticipate there'll be some questions. And again, I recognize that this is really the first time that we're sharing with the public. The board got a little bit of a preview in their board packet, but really the first time that we're starting to look at some of these planning dates. So take it away.
Great, and before we get to that, just want to update on some summer projects. This is not the exhaustive number of summer projects. But just starting off at Mabel I. Wilson School this summer, again, this was part of the capital reserve money that was authorized and transferred at the budget meeting in May. At Mabel I. Wilson School, a lot of the flooring, as you probably have seen if you've gone through that building, especially in the main corridors, outside the cafeteria, in the lobby area, outside the library, those floors, the tiles were literally coming up. They're that old. Kids were tripping, and we ended up replacing the corridor in those some of those common areas. You can see a picture of that in the upper left. We wanted to make sure that it would look like a primary school or an elementary school, and so we wanted to retain some of the designs, but we just kind of made it pop with the colors of the district, and that was input from students and staff actually saying, please don't just put down some boring floor. What you're seeing is just a portion of the project being done. This was a little bit ago, so it's not completed. We'll continue working on that. There's a lot of painting going on in the district. In fact, we've hired Doton's Construction, their paint staff, to come in and just do a tremendous amount of painting in all the buildings this summer because we are so far behind on painting. Having done the modulars year after year after year after year, we have a lot of spaces that hadn't been painted for more than 10 years. And so you're seeing some pictures, for example, on the lower left. The gym at Mabel I. Wilson School was repainted with the district colors as well. Trying to put that, you'll see that in all of our buildings. The middle school, I don't think had been painted for many spaces in 15 years or longer. And we've gotten a lot of classrooms done already and common areas at the middle school. It's going to look a lot better. Those are other pictures of the hallway outside the cafeteria in the center at the bottom there, and the work that's being done there. And then everybody's favorite for some reason, this was a big smash of a hit, and I know already kids are playing in it. It's the sandbox, and that is the cover of the sandbox. This is the best sandbox you're ever going to see, probably. It is a draw, and it has been talked about for years for some reason. It's been a favorite, so that is something that has been built this summer. At middle school 4-8, the tile in that building has not been replaced since the building was built 18 years ago, or 19 years ago now, and so that entire foyer or lobby area and the hallway that goes up to the 6-8 area and to the music area of the school is being replaced. In fact, the tile is down now, but just needs to be completed and all the edge work done and some painting around that. But it looks a lot better. Those tiles were literally coming up. There were holes in the floor. We've known about this for years, and finally we're able to get to that with the money. And some of the woodwork in the lobby has really been worn. Not the steps, we did the steps last summer, but some of the other woodwork that goes around the lobby floor, and that also is being replaced and redone this summer. So I think it'll be a big improvement. At the high school, you'll see some additional water stations. One of them, I think at least one of them was a gift of the class of 2024 that was put in. We've been putting these in for about 5 years now. And these are water bottling stations that kind of getting away from those old fountains and putting these in. We've been doing that throughout the buildings every summer, and thank you to the class of 2024 for making sure this one got into the high school. I can't remember how many we have at the high school now, but it's several. At the high school, you'll also see that we have done a lot of painting. Again, did a lot of painting at the high school last summer, and we're continuing. There's a lot of halls at the high school. I call them the back halls in the high school that are used but not as public facing, and they have just been really worn out and dirty. And we've known it, and we've really been aggressively getting on top of that this summer. In the lower left corner, that is going to be the new SRO office. We're moving the SRO office, which is literally a makeshift office that was thrown up a few years ago, and really is unsightly in the lobby next to the cafeteria. We're going to be reconditioning that space to become more of a vendor area for sports, reducing the space so that we can open that lobby up, and moving the SRO to a more, what we consider to be a more fashionable office, instead of that kind of rundown place they were using. And also in the main drag closer to the library and still on that end of the high school. So that's a lot of the work of the high school. There's some pictures that you won't see because we haven't finished it yet, but the eating area outside the high school is, that groundwork is getting redone, and actually that groundwork is in place. We're having all the tables completely reconditioned, repainted, and then surfaced so that we don't have to keep doing that every year. And there'll be fencing put up, or planters, not fencing, to secure the area, and it's going to look a lot nicer for the students to be eating out there. The other piece that we have that will not be taking place until 1st of August, we'll be putting windows in the high school cafeteria so that there is no daylight right now in the high school cafeteria, much like we did at the Wilson School last year. We'll be opening the windows up at the high school. One thing I didn't mention was the revolving renovation project at Mabel I. Wilson School. That's not a photo up here, but that project will take care of about 40% of all the windows and exterior doors on the Tuttle Road facing side. So that work has started, and it will be completed this fall.
And just a little note for the revolving renovation, those are funds that we apply to the state, and they get 50%.
50% was forgiven, and then 50% is 0% interest.
Yes, and so we actively look for projects that we can propose and get funds through that program. So we have a number of projects that we're working through that program.
And this is the first one we've been able to do through that and actually physically get it done. We got some of that work done last year, which was HVAC replacement at Wilson School for the cafeteria and upgrading some of the other HVAC systems that we had. But that project will be done this fall. So 40% of all those old windows that don't open, the doors that are creaky at Wilson School will all be replaced, the worst of them. And then we'll still need to deal with the other ones through the bond, which was part of the bond referendum project. There's $2.75 million to address the rest of the windows, the rest of the doors, and other systems at Mabel I. Wilson School as well. So those will be done through the bond project. At the district office, these windows that were in place were there since 1908 when the building first opened, and I'm not joking, that's the truth, and have finally been replaced. It's been on a capital list for years. The windows are they're terribly inefficient. They leak. The heat goes right out the windows, and so we're finally able to get that project done. That's about 99% done. This summer, Rangers Rock edition of my report, we had the 8th grade, several 8th graders, a group of them went to Spain in June. This is actually the youngest group that's gone overseas that I can remember. And so it was very exciting. It was a very successful trip. I want to just thank the teachers, Sheila Conlon, Florencia Layler, and Doug Maker, who's an ed tech. Doug is an ed tech at the middle school. All three of them went to Spain with the students, and they were really excited about doing this for these 21 students, and I'm glad that it was able to happen. I know everybody was a little nervous about 8th graders going overseas, but the report that came back was that everything was great.
And this was a proposal that came before the board.
To the board.
Trips like this are board approved, and they really take the teachers to initiate these types of trips. And so, yes, it's incredible that the middle school teachers willing and obviously able to take a nice sized group of eighth graders.
They were very excited to do it. Yep.
So hopefully we'll see more proposals before the board in the future.
All international trips come before the board for approval. High School National Honor Society raised $1,000 for the Maine Cancer Foundation. And we're awarding that check to the Maine Cancer Foundation. The GHS National Honor Society, I have to say, I've just put a kudos out. They're just a wonderful organization. Melissa Fowler, who's on the right here, is one of the co-advisors to NHS, along with Dina Latanzi. I believe they're both doing it at this time. And they both have done a great job over the last few years energizing that group. So I had talked about our retiring teachers. You'll see this on social media. So all for the next few weeks, we'll have each week we'll have featuring a staff member who has retired, and just giving a little information about them. So just wanted to kind of give a plug on Instagram and Facebook. Also, we'll be doing a series over the next few weeks of. We started doing this already. We have 2 or 3 that have gone out on social media. The silo projects, which are independent projects that students at the high school can opt into doing, getting credit for doing an independent project for a semester or a year. And in this case, Liam O'Brien, who just graduated, was giving a presentation on sports management, so we featured him most recently on social media. And now to what Leanne had mentioned, and Leanne jump into, because she's been part of these discussions, just kind of going through a few slides about the school project. And we've gotten a couple of emails recently, I have anyway, just asking what's going on. This is really the first rollout of what to start expecting with the project. Now it's been about a month. So this is the schedule that the architects, Stephen Blatt Architects, had rolled out prior to the referendum. And you can see this is just a general scope of a schedule. And where the green arrow is where we are currently. So the referendum date, obviously, if it had not passed, it would have cut off at that point. We're now on to the next one, which is the design development phase. The architects all summer are working more than 100% to take the concept designs that were created for the referendum, which were only preliminary, and now to start putting the details in. And what they're going to be doing is earmarking areas where they need public input. And that will be coming through working with a building committee and several other subcommittees that I'll talk about in just a minute. But the architects have to start doing that design work first before they can even ask the building committee, what do you think about these things? Should we go in this direction or this direction? They have to start that work, and they have been, right after the referendum, literally the next day, they started that design work. They haven't stopped since then. And you can see, again, in this just large schedule, so they're hoping to get the basic design development done in October. It doesn't mean that the input is done in October. That just means their design is done. And then they're going to be asking for input. They need input on many areas of the design, and then they'll be going back and putting those designs and refining them. So the construction documents, so between October and March, all that building committee work is getting done to finalize what becomes the construction documents, which have to be completed by the architects sometime in March of 2025. So that those documents are prepared and ready to go out to bid in April, just a month later. And so I would say if all goes as planned, but it has to go as planned. There's really no, well, I hope it goes as far, well, these dates are pretty much set by the architects, and so there's not a lot of wiggle room. The bid openings, so they go out to bid in April. The bid openings will be in May, a month later. And then in order to keep the school on schedule, along with all the other pieces, and I'll talk about that in just a minute, if we're talking about just the school building, the pre-K1 building, ground would be broken in June. Doesn't mean that site work would start in June. Site work actually will be starting this fall, making sure that the site work is handled throughout the months leading up to the groundbreaking. But the actual construction itself, the breaking of the ground, would be in June. And I'm expecting there to be some sort of groundbreaking ceremony that we would have hopefully before school ends in June, that we will invite everybody to, the whole community. And then building, the substantial completion of the pre-K 1 building would be done in December of 2026. Now, I know that sounds early.
Yeah, and I was wondering if this slide was a little older or newer.
So this is actually the accurate one. So what I,
Okay.
let me explain. December 2026 is when the architects say we can get this done substantially. Doesn't mean all the systems are up and ready to go, but you could literally occupy the building in January 2027 and keep going with the systems and keep working on them. That does not mean that students will be ready to go into the building in January 2027. And our plan is to continue keeping it August of 2027
I was
is
like,
when
wow.
the school will actually open for students.
For clarifying.
But the architects, this is architectural lingo, when I talked to Steve and Doug this week, they have to declare a substantial completion at some point, and it's 18 months, they're forecasting 18 months. If there is some sort of setback that could go beyond December of 2026, again, it doesn't mean that we could technically put students in January of 2027. Lots of systems won't be quite ready. Those are things that take a while to get balanced. I would not want to be moving students halfway through the year either. So I think this is substantial completion and actually moving students in to that building are two different things. And so you'll see architecturally 2026 of December, that's when it will be, the building is completed substantially, but we're sticking to August of 2027 when we actually would move students into that building and staff. So I just wanted to kind of give you what that means.
Can
Do you
I
have- do
throw
you
in
have
a
a
question?
question?
So I assume the facilities building will have to come down and one will go up before all this. Any
No, we're just going to
sense-
do that later. No, I'm going to talk about that.
This is
This is only the building
the
itself.
building, the
Okay.
pre-K 1 building.
But good point.
Just, yeah,
led me
just
to
to be
ask.
clear.
Let's work around it.
That's okay, yeah.
I will get to that in a minute, though, Christina. So what's been happening this summer? So between the referendum and now, which has been about a month, we are close to closing on the abutting property. There's a half acre of land that was part of the bond package that has to be closed on, obviously, before we can do anything else. We have not signed a contract. We have not closed on the property yet. All those papers are in the works with our law firm, and we're about to sign a new contract, just kind of going back and forth with Stephen Blatt Architects to complete that contract. Architectural detail, I've already talked about that, getting those bid plans ready so that the building committee can weigh in on multiple areas. Development of project timelines and schedules, I'll talk about that in just a moment. That's on an upcoming slide. Getting the financial plan in place. One of the things, obviously, the board approved tonight was that important resolution for reimbursing fund balance so we can flow cash until February. Fine-tuning the space studies, for example, Mabel I. Wilson School. The architects did space studies of all of our buildings, but Wilson School, they are finishing some changes that they wanted to make in spaces like the STEM area, looking closer at those areas at Mabel I. Wilson School. They did that as part of the concept design for the referendum. Now that the referendum passed, they actually have to do the design piece of those spaces that will be reconfigured at Mabel Wilson School, including the new addition of 4 classrooms. Right now, there's a lot of conversations with the town, the Department of Transportation, Department of Environmental Protection. Permits have to be pulled. The architects are handling those things. I have talked with the new Cumberland town manager, and he is right on board with helping on all phases of the project. So thank you to Mr. Sturgis for that. I mentioned the permitting process. There's permits that have to be pulled for a lot of different things. And then we have to go to the planning board in Cumberland with a full design in October or November is what we're expecting to do. So that will be coming up. So all these things are in the works this summer. And then we also will begin the process of reaching out We have been talking to a couple of the neighbors, but all of the butters will be providing more specific communication, including how we'll be buffering our property to help them. And we've had informal conversations with a couple of them, but we'll be formalizing that communication coming up. And I know you want to say.
Yeah, including with the new maintenance building, which will be moved, so, because there will be a butters to that as well. So I know we've talked a lot about what's been going on in the area where we're proposing the new school, but as a reminder, we're putting the maintenance building over on the other side, and want to make sure that we have conversations with those neighbors as well.
Behind the pool.
So I understand you've had some conversations with some of the neighbors and abutters.
All of them. We need to have all of them.
Can you either give a sense of when you'll formally reach out to them and/or send them a letter of sorts now so they know it's coming? Because the sooner they have even information you don't know the answers to yet, I think it'll be better as a neighbor.
We just talked
were
about
talking about that this week.
Read my mind. Thank
Yes,
you very
exactly. Do you want to do some more doors? Were you just offering?
And there is a meeting coming up between one of the neighbors who has the most land abutting the new school and Doug and Steve.
Right, next
Which we
week.
had I have been setting up with them. So that's happening next Tuesday. So it's just one neighbor. But maybe we could open it up to more, possibly. He has very specific concerns, and that's why we set this meeting up, but perhaps we can
Yeah.
open something like that up.
I think, one-on-ones, I think will be our initial focus.
Okay,
but,
we'll stick with that then, yeah.
Because I've had a couple of our neighbors call and say they have very specific questions, like very specific. Because of this, can you do this? Or are you thinking about doing this? So I think it is very one-on-one, depending on where someone's situated and what they're doing. But I agree that we need to have just a communication, whether it's a flyer or something that we put in the doors to say, we're working on it, we're going to get back, we're going to get to you, and have those conversations and answer your questions. So that's definitely something we talked about this week with the architects too. So
Yeah, if we could be proactive with the neighbors, not wait for them to have to
Absolutely.
speak to us, I
Exactly.
think that would be good.
yes,
Thank you.
agreed. So hopefully this will help with some of the, and this will all be posted on our website. We have a building page website, and we're going to be kind of revamping now that we're past the referendum and putting some more current information up so that people can refer to it. But in September 5th, the board would, through this schedule, formally appoint a building committee. And obviously, and I'll talk a little bit more about it, Leanne and I have been coordinating and talking about it all week with the architects, exactly what roles need to be on that building committee. But at the end of the day, the board appoints the building committee and all the names that are on that committee. So there'll be conversations obviously happening between now and September 5th, in which the board would be, part of that conversation.
Yeah, and just the board, this would be a really big part of our retreat, is some of these very detailed conversations about these plans. And also I know we're about to start some one-on-one conversations about areas of interest, and we'll also be talking about this as well. So yeah, as Jeff mentioned, this is just very preliminary, so we had something to share because we have not had a chance to discuss this.
Yeah, this is really a first. In fact, we were working on this. I was working on this with Leanne today, still working on this. We've been working on it for a while, but finalizing some of this. So this is all draft. The planning board, as I mentioned, in late fall, probably October, November. I'm thinking more November. We'd be ready to go to the planning board. That's the architects really taking the lead on that. The maintenance building. So the maintenance building, as Christina mentioned, has to move first in order for us to, to get the new school in there, because it's sitting in the space where the new school has been designed to be. So the maintenance building bid, and a lot of this information comes from the architects. The bid would go out in January for the new building. This is a low, what do I want to say, a low bid project in terms of the percentage of this whole entire project. It's a small amount. And we think a separate contractor from the rest of the project is probably going to be interested in this project that wouldn't be interested in the school project. So with the bid going out in January, getting the construction started in February, been told you can start construction in the winter without a problem on this building. That construction would continue until July. So between February and July, the maintenance building would be built in the area that is behind the pool, which it was designed for. So that's completed in that by July, the facilities department is moving into that building, and then the old maintenance building is being taken down. Now, I want to say there was a meeting with the Historical Society to discuss that input. They're going to have input, Historical Society, what pieces of that building can be salvaged and incorporated into the new project. There's a lot of interest from the Historical Society around some components that are very historical in that building, and as we explained earlier, there's no way to salvage this building. It's been looked at, you can't move it. It would not survive a move, even across campus. So that piece will be part of that input before construction, or before the old maintenance building is taken down in the summer of '25. So in April of '25, and again, this kind of goes back to earlier, the pre-K 1 school bid would go out, and this is something that changed with the architects in their conversations with us. We had assumed that the addition to the Mabel I. Wilson School, the 4 classrooms, would be added after or at the end of the project. They've said that's not necessary. They redesigned those 4 rooms, so they're up and down now, and they don't need the space that they thought they needed, and they can contain that project even with the modular buildings there. And so they want to get those 4 rooms done simultaneously with the building, considering that it probably will be the same contractor. So they want the bid to go out, they think they can get a better price that way, and they think that just having those rooms available sooner will be important, and just kind of getting a lot of this major construction done. The turf field bid would also go out in April. Now, the turf field might be a different contractor, most likely will be a different contractor, because this is a specialized project. But again, the bids would go out for those 3 major pieces in April, and then the turf field is going to be a smaller project, again, more specialized contractors who are probably interested in that project. The architects feel, based on many turf field projects they've worked on, that they can get that construction started in May of 2025, so a month later. And then that construction would continue through August, and probably just in time for the fall 2025 season to be started. It might be a little bit after the season starts, but that is what they feel will happen with that schedule. And then in July, the maintenance building construction will be completed. The old building will be taken down. The school construction will begin, and actually that probably will begin in June, but we put July there. So either end of, somewhere in June, will ground break, and then the major construction would start in July. And then the addition to Mabel I. Wilson School, those 4 rooms, would also start in July after school gets out. And then on-campus improvements, which would be road reconfiguration. If you remember back to the design, the entire campus Ave Road that goes through the campus would be reconfigured. And then other campus improvements at Mabel I. Wilson School with the bus loop, parent drop-off, and then the parent drop-off and bus loop in front of the new school. All of that will start taking place and I think it's going to be completed for the most part in the summer of 2025 from what the architects are saying, because they've got to get those things done so that they can continue with the major construction. So I'm going to stop for a second, see if there's any questions, because I know it's a ton of material that I just went through.
And what about the additional parking?
I don't know if I am assuming that that's the summer of 2025. For example, the additional parking that's going to be over the GCA, I'm trying to say, not watershed area, runoff area.
Yes.
That we've got, I'm assuming that will happen during that summer as
Because
well.
I'm assuming we'll be losing some spaces
Yes.
as work begins on the school project.
Yeah, they want to get all that done at the same time so that, they can start working around this stuff.
No, I think that on-campus improvements was what I was also going to ask about, because it would seem if they are making those changes with the MIW bus loop and all of that, that would need to
Yeah.
be done so that it could be used in the way that it's intended to be used come the fall.
And I just should point out the word draft on this, because as we continue having conversations with the architects, some of this, I assume, will change, they'll get better information, more detailed information. This is our general scope, what they think is gonna happen before they dig in. So I just wanted to kind of put that disclaimer out, and just say, don't be surprised if you see this in a couple months and it's tightened up a little bit more. We have more information. But right now, this is their best estimate as to when things will happen, what they're planning.
So, question. It looks like the turf field bid goes out in April, so I'm going to guess that prior to that, the building committee will be having perhaps a turf subcommittee, and there'll be many conversations talking with the bidders about
Yep.
options for the contents of said turf field,
Yes.
right? Just to assure the
That's
public.
the next slide.
Oh, I'm so ahead of you, okay.
Any other questions before I move on? Okay, so, and now we're into 2026. Again, these are estimates. They feel that those 4 rooms at Mabel I. Wilson School will be completed in January, and that the Mabel Wilson bus loop and parent drop-off changes will be done in the summer of 2026. So I have to digress and go back already and just realize I had not looked at that close enough. So they're not planning to do the Mabel Wilson School on-campus improvements. They had decided to hold until the summer of 2026. I know we had talked about that, and we changed this. So I will go back and reiterate that part, that I did make that mistake on that. But and then the final school construction for the pre-K 1 school, again, if you look at substantial completion, it would be December of 2026. We're saying, when we talk to the architects, we're really saying our target is August of 2027. July of 2027 is really a better target, so that we've got the summer to make sure that we've got all the moves. We're gonna have to hire a moving company. There's no way our custodial staff can do that, to help with all the moves that will have to happen in the summer of 2027. Because we're not just talking about moving into this new building, we're talking about a new intermediate school, which would be Mabel I. Wilson School. The middle school will become a 5-8 school. So we've got a lot of moves and a lot of moving parts that we're working with.
And when would the portables be removed?
During the summer of 2027, those get removed.
It's a big summer.
Yeah, so it's a huge summer. Obviously, there'll be a clerk of the works that will be helping with the oversight of all of this, and working closely with the architects to make sure, and the construction company will be part of those meetings. There'll be weekly meetings talking about all of this as time goes on, which is what we've done with other building projects. And then the off-campus improvements are the Main Street improvements. There's a little bit on Tuttle Road. DOT is now saying we don't really need turn lanes on Tuttle Road anymore, was the last they gave us, but Main Street still needs improvements. That's where the town manager will be helpful in helping us get those conversations. I know the architects have already reached out to DOT. They've already met with DOT, reached out again to meet with them. They're kind of backed up, but we'll be coordinating that to make sure we get those Main Street improvements done, and the communication around the Main Street improvements, which is a lot of that communication is actually is through the town of Cumberland. They handle a lot of that communication. So we'll be working with them on that.
And with those neighbors too.
No, exactly. The neighbors too, where the turn lanes are going to be affecting.
Right.
Because those turn lanes that will be going in.
But
Yeah.
we'll be reaching out before.
We'll be reaching out
Yes.
sooner than later, just explaining
Yes.
that you might be impacted. We don't, yet know, but we're going to be working with each of our neighbors on
And give
those
them a
things.
single point of contact for all the neighbors.
I had a question about the clerk of the works. Will that be outside of the district? Will that be a hire? Will they work for the district? Will they work for the architects? How does that process look?
So it'll be someone that we agree to, that the board agrees to, the building committee agrees to, the board agrees to. But they'll be working for the architects, for the architectural firm. And they'll be the liaison between the architects and the construction company to make sure that basically the architect's eyes and ears for the construction that occurs in all those phases. So the architects already have a name of somebody who could be available and is currently doing another project in Maine and will be wrapping up. And so they'll be putting that name forward, but again, you all will be very much part of that process in knowing. It's not an appointment, it's just a consent, is this fine with the board? Is this fine with the building committee?
Thank you.
So,
Question. And maybe it's on the next slide. So as of right now, this, on the MSAD 51 website, there's no longer that tab on the upper right corner for
Right.
budget and school project. So this, when do you expect that this will all be available?
so this will be up on the page, but you're right, we don't have the tab up there anymore, that button you can just push.
Yeah.
We could put it back up there if it's easier.
I mean, I think that would be great because it is a little hard. It's not super intuitive, where to find it. So I think it'd be great if those people want to
It
follow
should be
along.
available on Monday.
On Monday, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I agree. I think having that button to the upper right back would be really helpful.
And all these materials will be
All
going
these
up there.
materials, yeah.
Everything that then gets brought forward through these meetings will go up
Be there,
on the
yeah.
website. Yep.
Great.
I will make sure we get the button back up.
Thank you.
Yeah, I heard that was actually easier to navigate. Okay. Is everyone okay with this timeline as it is, or any other questions? This is, again, I know, we've been in these conversations literally like yesterday and trying to put this all together. We've been talking for weeks about this, but making sure that we were solid before we put this out publicly and having those conversations over and over. Leanne's participating in a lot of those this week. Any other questions?
I just had a quick question about the turf field. Is the product that we are hoping for even available? That's PFAS-free, that's, economic or climate-friendly, safe for kids, blah, blah, blah. There's a laundry list of desires, and there was a lot of question amongst the community that product was not even available.
So I don't have that answer. That would be Pat Carroll,
Okay.
who's the engineer working, or the architect working on that. So he can answer that. My understanding is that there are materials available, but I don't know the specifics.
And just to
on that.
add, we were touching base earlier on this week too. There is concerns about the lead time for turf products generally. So it is something that could be that once we make a decision, putting an order in could take longer than we'd like. And so it is something that we do want to really dive into to start answering some of those questions. And I know Falmouth just replaced, they had a turf field, they just replaced it, and they did provide us some information we can share with the board of what the materials they chose, and I'd be interested in the why behind their choices, because obviously that's where our kids go now and play, are the Falmouth fields and the North Yarmouth field and North Yarmouth Academy fields, to understand what choices are being made around us.
Yeah, they put crumb rubber into theirs. They just replaced theirs. And what they put it in, I asked why, what was the reasoning behind it, and I was given a link to a lot of safety information that their committee had explored and had really dug into, and they felt that was the best material for their community.
They shared a link to the EPA site that I don't remember, a new report that was out in April. I don't know when it was posted, but I was like, it may have come up right after we were sharing a lot of our information, but there is a new, some new studies on the EPA site that was part of the link they shared. So I want to make sure everyone has the link to that.
I think it's fair to say probably, I'm guessing, that, this is like a best case scenario, that if we found the right material for the right amount of money and everything checked the boxes, then that's probably when the turf field would be constructed. Is that like a fair statement? 'Cause
That's a fair statement.
We won't, it's not,
Yes.
I don't want anyone, like coming to judgment with like we haven't even come up with the RFPs and the field product yet, and all of a sudden it's May, like, you know, to the lead source time. So I think that one of all of them is probably the most likely to shift, but all of them could shift, I think. And I think we're not like tied to exactly this timeline. We're tied to the best product we can get.
Yeah, and I hope that we weren't only given best case scenarios by our architect. I hope they built in some buffers for knowing that things take a longer time. But I think the other point is there's a lot of important conversations and decisions that we're gonna want to be engaged with over the next few months.
Which kind of leads into the next
There we go.
couple of slides. I know that there's a lot of questions about how are these decisions being made, and the finer details on this. So this is, again, draft is on everything because it's so important to stress the draftiness of this. Right now in July 18th that we're at. But this is the general framework in talking with the architects, and Scott Poulin was part of these conversations, Leanne was part of these conversations with the architects this week. We're just trying to nail down for the board something to consider for the structure, and really for the architects. This is trying to get them to finish these designs for all these pieces and keep these pieces in place, and they felt this was the most helpful structure. So if you think about the building committee, which, and I'll talk specifically about the building committee in just a moment, in the membership of the building committee, that's approved by the board in September, and including all the names that would be part of that building committee. So the building committee is kind of the main hub for a lot of this decision making, and this is a committee that would work from September through, you know, conceivably until June, on the finer details and giving the input, or at least until construction documents are completed and the bids go out. But there might be some work for the building committee even after that. So if you think of the building committee in the middle, there was 4 major committees that they felt, or subcommittees from the building committee, that they felt were very important to have. One was HVAC, which is the kind of heating, cooling that will be in place in the sustainability efforts of this building. Needs to be a committee that they have sooner than later, a subcommittee of the building committee. So conceivably, these will be people who sit on the building committee, who are interested in serving on the subcommittee, although it could be pulling in some other people too. Another subcommittee would be interiors and furnishings. This one probably doesn't need to get started right away, but this has to do with, look around this room, the paint color, the carpet design and color, probably the doorknobs, probably not the doorknobs, but you know, just everything you can think of that just comes down to interiors and furnishings. I think a lot of our staff members will have a high interest in this one, and again, we'll have a lot of staff members who sit on the building committee and also might be sitting on this one as well. So that's another major component of this work. Security systems. So in talking with the architects, they felt it was better to just use existing groups we have. We have a great safety and security committee in our district. It's made up of several first responders, as well as staff. Board members are on it. We have really the whole group that we would need. And so for the architects to be able to come and run things past this committee, they felt was more efficient than having a separate subcommittee. We already have one. Same thing with curriculum and just the pre-K. We know that the state has now moved ahead with a plan to move 3-year-olds into the public schools. How does that impact the school? All along my stand has been that we can't expand pre-K in this building because we don't have enough room, and we won't have enough room. We based it on having essentially 2 or 3 rooms in this building, and how are we going to handle 3-year-olds and talk that through. There's obviously multiple ways to do that. But these are conversations that need to be had. And again, instead of replicating a committee, we already have a curriculum committee. And can we work on these questions, especially for the building standpoint, how it impacts the building, at least through the curriculum committee, and not have a separate committee that's formed. So those were kind of the 4 big ones that circle around this building committee. The building committee would be doing a lot of the big question marks work, giving feedback, advice to the architects. Those will be regular meetings of the building committee, so whoever is sitting on that committee kind of have to commit to these regular meetings. We're going to try to nail down a theoretical schedule and then invite people to be part of that, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. Before I do, there were two other really important committees that sit outside of the building committee, and these two have to start sooner than later. One of them is the site plan committee, subcommittee, and this is a subcommittee that really is not necessarily have to have any building committee members on it, and it needs to start probably before school starts because they're dealing with all the permitting, they're dealing with where things are going to be going and kind of getting things straightened out. The site plan has to go to the planning board for approval as part of this process, so we really have to have that subcommittee. It's probably a small subcommittee. I assume it will have Scott Poulin on it, Dawn Foster, our facilities supervisor. We'll need at least a board member, probably a board member on there. We'll need, obviously, the architects on there. It's a small group, but it's kind of a bouncing around, making sure we've covered all the areas of the actual site plan of the campus and the design. But that sits outside the building committee. Connected, but sits outside and has to start sooner than later. The other one is the turf field, because that one is one that is starting sooner than later. The maintenance building is part of the building committee, and they don't feel like there's a need to have a separate subcommittee for the maintenance building. They think they can achieve all of the pieces they need. It's a very straightforward project through the building committee, even with the building committee starting in September. But the turf field is a specialized committee and subcommittee, and it's connected to the building committee, but they didn't feel like it was so specialized it needs to be its own subgroup that operates independently, and you'll see that's why the lines are between the site plan committee and the building committee.
And we just also want to create an opportunity because there is like certainly special interest in the turf field that we're able to have those conversations targeted.
And those would be definitely for the turf field, soliciting people who want to be on that. I assume they'll want to be student athletes, coaches, boosters, at least a community member, a board member, if there's interest there, on being on this subcommittee. But this is one that is very specialized. David Shapiro, the athletic director, obviously would be on there, along with the architects would be on that committee. So that's a very specialized group. So it might seem like a lot, but there's also just going to be groups of people who are super interested in a topic, and it would be kind of working on a subcommittee, the way the structure is. And the architects are trying to keep it all together. So they felt this structure was the most helpful to them. And then off to the other side, you'll see planning sessions. So these are just one or two sessions with applicable staff. For example, a session to talk about the new school library. I know there's been staff that really want to have more input. So they would have planning sessions with people who are interested, who are staff members generally, who just want to talk more about the details of the library. And so those might just be quick 2-hour sessions with the architects to kind of talk back and forth details on making that space as workable as possible on specialized areas of the school. So we kind of put that off to the side. They thought that was the best way that they could handle those as well. So I'm going to stop and see if there's comments or questions about the structure. That makes sense.
Do we have an amount that we're going to have community involvement, how many seats we're kind of thinking, or, because it seemed like the vote was really close. So
I think it's the next slide.
Okay.
I know it's July, but it's a little bit longer, and this part we felt was important to get it out and not wait till August, but yes, it is the next slide.
Well, that was kind of my question too, is community outreach or, how is that integrated into the building committee?
Yep. Here we go.
Okay.
Here's part of it. Well, wait, hold on. I have a quick question. That's a very big committee.
It is.
So, one of my concerns is from last year, if we're adding on a new committee that we didn't have before with the same amount of
We got to get
resources.
rid of some.
Right. Well, yes. I mean, that would be where the math would go, or we have to like figure out a way to open up some time resources available. So, is that on the next slide? Am I missing?
Well,
should we
no,
talk
I
about
mean,
that?
this will be, I think it's really great to have this before we start our one-on-one conversations and then to really dive into it, our retreat. And just like as a reminder of the process. So, you know, this is a new board. We're sort of restarting this year. There isn't any committee assignments yet. We have to work through that together. And so the process for that right now is I'm individually meeting with every board member to discuss interests, goals, opportunities, and then we pull all that information. Kim and I will pull all that information together and put together a proposal of committees, membership, goals for the year, and then we get together at our retreat, and then we react to it and finalize it. And so I think it's really important to have these drafts to be able to go into those conversations with, because I have significant concerns about the number of committees and people, how we're spreading people too thin, and also, you know, the amount of decisions that need a broad stakeholder group to be involved, informed, or engaged with.
Yeah, I should also point out, if we go back to the slide for just a moment, some of these topics, some of these subgroups may not be, they're not going to be longstanding. A lot of them are ad hoc. For example, HVAC and sustainability, I know that Steve Blatt had mentioned he really needs that subgroup to be working sooner than later, but then their work will wrap up. They have to make decisions sooner than later.
Right,
so
but
this
then
may
like
only be 2 months,
But
and
then
then
like
it's
a
over.
tech one will come on. They'll replace right? For right now we have this, but
Yes.
then you'll have new ones come up as new systems come in or new needs come in is my guess.
There could be, for example, technology at some
Yeah.
point. There's just the tech systems. So later in the process, there might be a smaller group that does technology, and we, you know, once we get there. But it doesn't necessarily have to have board members on all these either. I just want to say that.
That's good to hear.
That might be just working with the technology leadership, the director and assistant director, and conferring with them in a planning meeting. So it may not really be asking board members to be participating in all of these subgroups and all this stuff. I think, you know, and I think that's where Leanne obviously is going to have those conversations with all of you. Because some of these are just internal staff, you know, we need to talk to Dirk Van Kuren and Donna Green. Okay, is this technology system that we're thinking about makes sense? Well, let's bring in a first grade teacher who's really into technology, and let's make sure that teacher is involved in that conversation, and the principal, you know what I mean? It might be a small group of just planning with the architects.
We need a RECE chart.
Yeah.
Responsibility, accountability.
The retreat's going to be exciting.
communication. I forgot what's the I? Anyone know what the I is?
Yeah, no.
Anyway.
Role, accountability.
And that's why I think some of these we're also trying to, you know, bring into other groups we've already got.
Yes.
Like security, and we've already got that established. Curriculum committee, let's use that committee. Let's not replicate committees.
And that's a conversation that we've also sort of start to work through as far as a separate facilities committee. Like everything that the facilities committee usually works on is long-term planning. This is our long-term planning that is going on with this new school project. So we may not need the separate facilities committee because this is our long-term plan. So I was thinking about that being one of the opportunities to kind of, and it will be the same people who would have been part of that facilities committee, because I have real concerns about the administrations being stretched too thin across these committees as well. So let's use the opportunities through safety, through curriculum, where we already have the group established and don't need to repeat.
Yeah, and I know when I'm just going back to the GCA for a minute, we did have that year that all that design was being done, the facilities committee, the 3 members of the facilities committee became the building committee, and there wasn't 2 different groups going on. So they were one and the same that year, if I remember correctly. So that's another way of looking at kind of consolidating and you know, structuring things a little differently this year. So, but I agree. I don't want us to get too stretched. I think some of these, like interiors and furnishings, unless somebody has just a real interest in that, I really see that more as a staff committee. There might be a parent on there who's, you know, really interested in that. But it's really, I think I see a lot of staff working with the architects on that committee and just being subcommittee and really talking about those things as much as possible. Again, we can talk about, who's on it, but that's kind of what I'm thinking. So I think some of these, I don't want to make people nervous because it does look like a lot and it's like, oh, I could be on 15 committees. We already have all these committees. No, you don't, we don't need board members on every subcommittee either. There's some, you might have a passion for the turf field and you just want to be on that. Talk to Leanne about that. But, I don't think it's necessary. We already have a curriculum committee that has board members on it. That's already done. Same thing with safety. That's already done. HVAC, if you have a super big interest in that, maybe that's when you want to be on. Again, some of these are only going to be a couple months, and they'll be real intense for a couple months, and it's gone because we don't need it for the duration. So just kind of keep that in mind too, because this whole design phase is really for this school year, and then the next school year, really a lot of this is not going to be needed. We're really just doing construction and getting it finished, or we've already completed major parts of construction. So this really is a design for the year.
So I imagine then we'd also be defining if someone was on the building committee, but not necessarily on any of those subcommittees, kind of
Right.
what that role would
You
be
could just be
outside
on
of
the
any
building committee.
specialized.
Yeah, you could just be on the building committee and you're not on any other subcommittees, you just serve on the building committee, or you are not on the building committee, but you are somebody in the community that we're soliciting or wants to be solicited to be on one of these subcommittees, like the turf field or whatever. So, and the next slide does start getting into that a little bit. So, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to add to your point, Tim, that the facilities committee last year was truly so much doing, interacting with Blatt and the whole building, that it can go poof as long as the building committee, we've already talked to. The building committee will have to take on some things. We actually did some other things, but the lion's share was the building. So we're handing that over.
It makes sense for a lot of synergy there.
And I did talk with Christina, who was chair of the facility committee, to not be like, you did such a terrible
good
job.
job.
We're taking it
You're
away.
done.
Such a
No,
good
you're
job
done.
that we're done. Yeah.
And it could just be they're merging, For the building committee itself, again, this is the main circle in the middle. The major driver is the building committee. And that's the group that would meet the most with the architects and just do the general support and input. It is a big committee. I think the sentiment around building committees is we hold meetings. Doesn't mean everybody can come to every meeting. Obviously, I think Steve even said that his experience with doing building committees for 35 years is that you might have half the committee there at a meeting. Just people can't come to every meeting. They make a commitment to be on it, they try to be there, but the reality is people are busy and you can't make it to every single meeting.
Yeah, and one thing that Jeff and I talked about is I would at least want to work with a board member or two who is going to be on this committee to come up with some dates that we could propose when we're soliciting community participation in advance to know, okay, here's the number of meetings, here's at least the first few dates, just to ensure that they could actually participate in those meetings, because I think that's really important.
And I will say, it says board of directors too, but if Leanne chooses to, that's something she's doing, merging the facilities in the building, maybe it's 3 board of directors then, if we're talking about that, but that's up to the board to figure out. And again, this is a draft, so I think we first just want to get input on the stakeholder roles, and then we need to start, finding people that are going to be on it, and there is another slide coming up to talk about that. Actually, it's at the bottom of this slide. But having 5 staff members on there, obviously these are staff members that would be in the new, this is primarily talking about the new building itself. Those specialty committees some of them are the building and some are outside the new building. The building committee will spend probably 75–80% of their time talking about the new school, if not more than that. So we're really talking about the new school itself. So making sure we have staff representing the grades. Allied Arts also support staff who would be in this new building. So we put 5 slots there. The administration, whether it's the principal and assistant principal or their tag teaming with that, having 2 parent guardians And again, this would be part of the public process of putting an ad out in early August, and there's a notation at the bottom, and you'll see the asterisks. These are roles that we need to put an ad out and ask people who are interested. A community member from Cumberland, a community member from North Yarmouth, town of Cumberland rep and a town of North Yarmouth rep. We work with both towns. It might be a member of their governing board, Cumberland Council, or North Yarmouth Select Board, or it might be a member of the town administration. However, the towns want to figure that out. I would be serving on the building committee, as well as Scott Poulin and Don Foster. Both Scott and Don are integrally a part of all the facilities operations in the district. Leanne would be ex officio to the committee, and then obviously the architects would all be participating. There's actually 4 architects involved in this: Steve Blatt, Doug Breer, Pat Carroll, who's not part of Steve Blatt's office, but is an architect that works with Steve Blatt frequently, and Andy Johnson. I'm not sure if Andy Johnson will be on the building committee or if he would just be on the turf field and site plan subgroups, but Pat Carroll will definitely be on the building committee. He has a lot of knowledge around the whole operation of it as well. So that's kind of the general thinking and feedback. Love to have feedback. You can either give it now, give it to Leanne. And then the note at the bottom was that we're thinking a public ad would be sent out. I think July, no one's really paying attention. People are, probably August is not much better. But we'll put it out in early August, run it for 2 or 3 weeks.
Put it in each of the town's newsletters.
Put it in the town's newsletters, and ask for those stakeholder roles that we really would like people to put their name in and why they're interested or something like that, just very short.
And
why
we've
you're
had
interested.
a few individuals who've reached out, so I was planning on, once we do post it, to reach back out to them directly.
And then, with that in mind, September 5th board meeting would be a list of these roles with the names of the people that that are coming forward. So I think with the public ad, we haven't talked this through, Leanne and I haven't, but
No.
I assume that there might be a couple board members that are interested in going through those applications, or interested people that are interested in being on the building committee, and kind of making those nominations or whatever.
So the process we followed from last year is that the chair of the committee and myself went through them, and the chair made some recommendations, and we discussed and then approved as a board.
Yep. And so I think the idea is to have, and this for the architects was very important, that September 6th they have a building committee, basically. That's what they need. They were very clear about that.
September 6th.
Well, I mean, it doesn't mean the first meeting would be September 6th, but at least they know they've got one. They've got one.
Because, we have a meeting where we would vote, but that's also why we want to have the schedule before that, because it will need to start.
Absolutely.
And so having those dates now, working with the board members who are going to potentially be on this committee to come up with those dates, as long with admin. So we aren't then struggling then to get to schedule this group.
Right, and obviously people that want to be on the committee, they would see the schedule and say, I can do that or I can't do that, and that would help them, determine if they're interested. And then there's the other opportunities for people to participate, and I think in that ad, our thinking was not only the building committee, asking for interest, but the turf field subcommittee would be one. I think there'll be a lot of public interest. Some of that I think can be handled just talking to, putting that out to student athletes, the booster organizations, obviously coaches, but also community members, and seeing who's interested in serving on that. So that's another opportunity. Same with HVAC and sustainability. I think there's certain people that just make sense that we need them on that group working with the architects, but also opportunity for community members that might be interested in being on that subcommittee. And then interiors and furnishings, I think I mentioned that earlier, mostly probably a staff committee, but I also think there could be community members, parents, whatever, that are interested in serving, so we could certainly put that out at the same time and ask people to submit that
Or wait
interest.
if we don't need it yet.
Yeah, the interiors and furnishings is one that is not, that one can actually wait for probably a few months.
Oh,
I
but
don't
this
know,
year?
maybe a couple months.
Okay. Yeah. If
Well,
there-
it's
if
all part
something-
of the design though, so it has to be done.
Okay, okay.
Might as well put it out, and even if we just tell people, we don't need you until November, but at least we're just taking care of it.
You think
You know.
maybe some of the students might want to be involved in that?
Well, it would be Maple I. Wilson students probably, because it's designing the pre-K one school.
I was just thinking some of the
Sometimes,
seniors or juniors that might be interested in that kind of thing.
and that's a good question, because our student representatives generally are joining whatever they can. They talk to Leanne about her, and we figure that out with them. We've also had students that are on committees who are not part of the board, and we've had them on. I don't know if you know a student that's really great with interior design, and we
Well-
actually do have some at the high school.
Well, we
who do that.
right? So.
So that might be.
Opportunities for silo projects and.
Yeah.
They have done those.
Sean, you actually beat me to it, but I would love to open up the HVAC and the sustainability to students. I think that could be a really interesting opportunity, especially as we look at, more trade schools.
Yeah,
and
it
like, to get kids interested in HVAC. So, yeah, I'd love to see students involved and all that.
And the green team potentially sort of
Yeah,
weighing in on that too.
exactly.
Yeah, environmental science.
So it sounds like we'll just kind of open these up. That's good feedback. And just put it out there.
And what I'm also anticipating, which isn't really built into this, and I think Kim mentioned it earlier, is just around communication, community engagement beyond these specific roles that we're looking for on committees. I also anticipate that there'll be either info sessions or some other type of focus session where we bring additional people in. It's different from being committed to a particular committee, but a way to bring a broader group of people into either updates about where we are on the process or a specific focus area where we think it's really important to have. It might be a workshop, like we've had, our board workshops where people feel like they might be able to come and participate, but they aren't necessarily committing to a committee role. So that's something I think we need to work out, because I do get a little concerned about scheduling committees, the more people that we put on them, but certainly want to make sure there's room for engagement.
Great point. And that's something that wasn't in this this presentation. Concept. Oops.
It is now.
It is now. It's now a new slide. But we will be, and a couple people have already asked us, how will you be communicating out the progress of this whole project? Are you going to be doing this on an ongoing basis? And yes, we will be. Melissa Porter in our office, I've already talked to her this week about it. She's very excited about doing all of the, just gathering pictures, for example, from week to week, and putting a picture in the newsletter, putting it on social media, just at least getting it out there, putting that as a regular part of these board meetings. Maybe it's a board member who wants to take that on and provide a visual update or whatnot on the project. But I think just making sure that we're continuously putting out information about this project and where are we at is going to be critical after school begins. I don't think this summer is obviously as much of a big deal right now. We're dealing with a lot of the design pieces, so there's not much going on with the public-facing part of it. But
And one other point, this doesn't capture all of our committees, obviously, because we also have some other committees that we've had we've invited community members into as well. So we'll be talking about those other opportunities beyond just what we're talking about here. So last year we had the Community Engagement Committee had community members, and the Equity Committee had community members beyond what we're talking about.
You were wondering earlier what the I stands for, and RACI?
Yeah.
Informed.
Informed.
yes.
See?
I think one other way to update is probably to continue going to town council and what is it called? Select board. Thank you. So rusty.
Yeah.
Because as we learned tonight from our first public speaker, he's more familiar with the town council meetings than here, and he has said numerous times to me, I don't read any of the emails. I'm not on any of your mailing lists, so
Absolutely.
it might be worthwhile to continue doing that too.
That's great.
Awesome. Yep, I added that. So if you have other ideas too, so this will be up on our website on Monday of this coming week. So if you have anything that you want to add to this, or you think you've got an idea to put up here, And this can obviously be revised at any point, but this is a draft.
Great.
I asked many slides earlier. The Mabel Wilson Playground, I meant to jump in and then didn't get a chance. There was a little bit of either misinformation or rumor, or concern, but how is the sandbox being protected so animals don't come in and use it as a litter box? And was there an object found in the sandbox that caused it to be closed for a while?
There was nothing dangerous in the sandbox. I know that much.
Okay.
I don't remember what it was that that information was given to me 2 or 3 weeks ago. There was nothing in the sandbox that was dangerous at all. I don't remember exactly what it was. Part of it was the sandbox in that construction was not completed yet, and people were using it.
Yeah.
And so it was closed to complete it and just make sure that, it was done before we had students using it. But in terms of enclosure, I don't have an answer for that. So that would be more of a facilities question. I know that this was a very important question mark along the way, and I just don't know the answer.
I have a half answer.
Okay.
There's
Facilities chair.
fencing around the whole playground area. And unless people leave the door open, the gate open, I know certainly my dog who wants to get in there, she's made it very clear, cannot. So it doesn't matter people keeping that gate closed, but it is, it doesn't have its own fencing, but it is fenced.
Yeah, we don't really have animals getting in there that I know of. I'm sure there's a cat or two that can squeeze through, but we haven't really had any activity that I can think of for animals.
Okay.
At Maple Weston School. So I know that was a concern though from the beginning is, will there be little droppings in there? But I will ask about it because I don't know if there's a cover. I know Corey Muncie had raised that question when we were talking about all this, or Scott had, one or the other. I think it was Scott that raised it. How are we gonna make sure we don't get animals in there?
And that would be a great opportunity to communicate with the community, since the community can use the playgrounds, just to be able to say, this is our process for the sandbox, and as we promote it and celebrate it, it'd be good to have that information too.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yeah, and we don't have a lot of communications going out except social media mostly. We'll have another newsletter in a few weeks, but this time of the year we tend to not have a lot of viewership, so we don't put a lot out, but certainly when we put that ad out in early August, that'll probably be an opportunity for another newsletter to go out.
And since we said the word playground, it just reminded me, where do decisions about the new playground at the school get made? Is that going to be part of the building committee?
So what I heard Steve and Doug say the other day is it could be part of the site plan subcommittee, or it could be its own committee down the road, but it's not something that's imminent.
And it's not something that decisions need to be made in
No.
the short term? Because I would obviously there's the new playground, but I think also revisiting MIW, especially as we're thinking about those portables coming out. I just wanted to recognize that that is going to be one of the topics that will be discussed at the building committee.
I think I personally, my opinion is that probably that would be a year 2 conversation and not a year 1 conversation for the 3 years that we're talking about. So I think that can probably hold that conversation till next year. But it's an important one because it affects a lot of people.
Especially since our community has very limited other playgrounds like this.
Yeah, true.
This is our playgrounds for North Yarmouth and Cumberland.
True.
So sorry. So you can probably guess what my question's about. So I know that the 3-year-old program is coming, like the train. So my question is, as we're building a new school and it's a pre-K through pre-K 1, and we're required to have X number of classrooms with pre-K 4s. And then we're going to be looking at expanding those to full days, as I understand.
Maybe. That's a question mark for the board.
Okay.
Yeah.
It had been promoted as one of the highlights of the new school, so that is where that came from.
As a possibility, but it
Okay.
still requires the board to weigh in.
And so I guess the question would be, how, in your vision with the new school, do 3-year-olds fit? And would that be an additional classrooms sort of idea, another project on the road? It's so soon, thought process hasn't come completely. Just with the idea that, you know, people are really concerned about the costs that we're spending. When we did the GCA, we had to get additional money, and I've already been asked about how are we going to avoid those problems. And so if the state is already asking us to add 3-year-olds, and you and I both know that 3-year-olds would be probably a half-day program similar to what we're providing now, I'm going to assume.
So all of that has to be, we have to develop a plan at the local level. Now the
Right.
state has made their decision.
Right.
So there's got to be a plan that, much like when we started the 4-year-old program, there was a plan that was developed. It was recommended. There was a group that worked on it, and it came to the board for a decision. And so I think the curriculum committee is going to have to discuss that and make a recommendation. And I did talk to Mari Trebelcock today, that she'll be the liaison administrator for the curriculum committee. That would be a topic that she'll have to be considering along with Julie Olson, Director of Instructional Support. I think we're gonna have to have a plan now that the state is moving ahead. We didn't sign on at the beginning. I think there's 3 phases. You can sign on at one of those 3. And we opted to wait and then build a plan. We're gonna have to have board support to do it. And what does this look like? I will just put it out there, and I've said this from the beginning, I'm concerned that if we're building too much into the 3-year-old program into this new building, that we could be short down the road at some point. So I think we have to be really careful that we're balancing, you know, the existing program that we've got for 4-year-olds, whether that moves to a full day, that needs to be part of this pre-K plan that we're bringing forward. And how are we handling the 3-year-old piece? Is that something that is in the new building, which my opinion is, I think 3-year-olds probably don't belong in a facility of this size, but that's only my opinion, and I know there's lots of opinions about this. But I also, you know, believe that's a process that has to be, there has to be a decision, a plan, and then the board has to approve that plan. Thankfully, we have time to do that. It doesn't have to be, that decision, it does not have to be made anytime soon.
And through curriculum, we could also discuss community model.
Yes, I mean, that's part of the conversation, because the state has put that out as a viable option. I mean, the funds can be used in that manner.
Yes.
So that has to be part of discussion, meetings, and then a plan that's brought to the board for final approval. So I think that's where, when the architects were talking to us about the pre-K piece and settling that piece, we need a place to do that, and curriculum makes sense to do that, and bring a plan forward from the curriculum committee that is approved by the board down the road.
Great question, thanks. Okay.
I think that's everything. If you have other ideas or pieces that you want to put in, this is just a draft. But the next thing that would come out would be early August with the ad. And I don't know if there's someone that wants to work on that with Melissa. Melissa Porter would probably be the one that's putting it together, or at least the draft. I don't think it's a big production to put that together, but we'll put something together. Well, we'd like to have some eyes on it, just for suggestions and ideas before it goes out. Okay.
Okay, so the last item, or the next item for communications, so I think I mentioned this earlier, where we are in process. We're sharing this information tonight, all in draft form. We don't have any of our committees set up this year yet. We've, talked about rearranging some of the committees. We're going to start the one-on-one conversations over the next few weeks with all the board members. We're going to put that together and put it back out to the board for review. So that's board goals, committee assignments, and so that will be what we're working on sort of behind the scenes, but we are trying to find a retreat date. It did not seem like a backup retreat date was going to work. And so if you haven't responded to Melissa yet, if you could make the original date, I think that's where we might end up.
on the 22nd was
The
the original
22nd.
date, and Melissa did send an email out if you could just let her know if you can do that one, because so far there hasn't been a lot of consensus around when people
Trying
can.
to schedule things in
There's at least 3
August.
people out at every meeting, or every date that we put out, I mean.
Yeah, and
So we wanted to finalize that.
so we have a lot of important things to discuss at our retreat, and so we just want to ensure we have maximum participation. So now we're going to check to see what the original date would work, and we'll have to fill Jeff in.
Yeah, I will not be there.
So, moving on, we have another item for action, which would be to enter executive session. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
And just to read this, so we're moving to executive session to discuss property acquisition pursuant of state statute MRSA 4056C. Thank you, Christina, for the motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sean. Then I just go all in favor. We don't have any discussion.
No.
So, all in favor? Thank you. It's unanimous. So this closes the public portion of the meeting. And thank you.